Hey, this is Coach Mike here at Raw Fitness. Want to talk to you today about one exercise in particular. I'm going to be going through a series of exercises that I believe everybody should do, and I rarely see done, at least in the big box commercial gym sense, in smaller functional training facilities like so. Then it is a little bit more popular, however it's highly butchered. And so the exercise I'm going to cover today is the single leg deadlift. Okay, so before I kind of get into the descriptions, I'll just give you the whole vision of what the actual exercise is, right? And so I'd be here. Okay, so that's the single leg deadlift. Obviously there is no weight in my hands while I'm performing the exercise. I will get into that a little later. First thing to note is how I cue the exercise, and so we instruct the client to stand on one foot, right? We want to have a soft knee. I will tell them to actually reach back with that back heel. I want them to actually try and, I'll tell them, say, touch the back window, or whatever direction their foot is pointing in. They should keep that back toe facing the ground. I want to instruct them to squeeze the glute on the stance leg, push into the ground, and come back like a seesaw, so they get that. And the client should also note that there's a straight line from ear, hip to the back heel when I'm at full extension. Right? So that's the single leg deadlift, okay? And that's when it's done correctly. So there's a few things that we see commonly butchered on the exercise. The first one I see a lot is not enough knee bend on the stance leg, so it'll look kind of like this, right? Where it's straighter, and that will throw the form off significantly. One thing to note about that is less knee bend equals less glute activation. Okay, they will feel it predominantly in their hamstrings without the glutes participating. It's really easy to get somebody to feel an exercise in their hamstrings. It's usually not where the client's deficient. We want them to be using their glutes. It's the strongest muscle in the body. Let's have it participate in hip extension. Okay, so the second thing that we see, besides the knee being bent, is just the lack of concept of that it is force application into the ground that makes the body stand up. So you'll see the client is, they'll kind of reach back, they'll do the exercise, and then they're kind of swinging themselves up. So it's almost like they're trying to pick up their torso and throw their foot to the ground. And then, I guess it's okay externally, it looks almost the same, but we talk about functional training or something that's going to help an athlete or a regular client to get through their daily life. Is what we do is when we walk, run, do anything athletic, we are pushing force into the ground. So this is no different. We want them to actually exert force into the ground with the stance leg to pick them up. Okay. So next thing that we'll see on it is external rotation of the trunk and the hips. So you'll notice this. Watch my back toe. They'll kind of reach back, and you'll see this kind of deal happen. Right. Sometimes we can just cue that, hey, keep your toe facing the ground. Sometimes there is a mobility issue in the stance leg. They're actually not flexible enough to get into, or mobile enough to get into the position. That would obviously take a bunch of mobility corrections, which are outside the scope of this video. Next thing that we see a lot is the miscues of the trunk with flexion. So we'll see this kind of deal is there. Instead of reaching back, we'll get the bend in the upper body type deal. Now I've no longer got that ear, hip, heel, that straight line going through, and now I'm starting to use my low back when I stand up. And obviously we're going to be holding weights while we perform this exercise, so we would now see the client start to extend from the trunk and cause low back issues. Don't want that. To clean that up, we usually use a dowel rod here, so we'll just back up any load, and we will have them grab the rod, keep contact head, thoracic, spine, and sacrum, or head, upper back, and butt, whatever way you want to look at it. And then if they just stand there, they've got to keep the rod in contact with all 3 points as they perform the exercise, right? So that usually cleans that up. The other thing we'll see is we will see trunk extension. So we'll get this, right? And so again, the same thing's happening on the other side. I'm just using my low back to pick myself up. And that could be even worse than the coming up from the flex position. And so that one's a little harder to coach. Usually we will coach our clients, we'll teach them about the two-hand rule we got from Kelly Starr, where he talks about if here's your ribs and here's your hips, your ASIS, your hip bone, right here, we want to maintain the same distance between those two hands the entire time we're performing the exercise. So if I were to come back and I were to do this, see that distance got bigger. So we tell them to focus on this point here, reach back, and then come up without changing that distance at all, if that makes sense. So no extension there, two-hand rule. And then we'll also see a lot, the back leg will refuse to reach. So we'll get this kind of deal right here. And I just picked up Mark Verstagen's new book, and he actually has this exercise in as a warm-up, which we thought is phenomenal. He uses a trick where he tells you to actually just take a band, a jump band if you got one, stand in it in the moving leg, and then just kind of put it around your shoulder. And now when I go to perform the exercise, I've got feedback where I know I'm reaching back with my heel to make that happen because of the band, right? So that's all body weight. Find a nice, at the end of the day, we train people that want to get stronger, faster, leaner, have less fat on their body, so we need to add external load to it. I like using kettlebells for this for a couple reasons. One of the big reasons I like using the kettlebells, I can set it down and it gives me feedback of the kettlebell is sedentary and then I've got to create force or that starting strength to get it off the floor, and it lets me know that I'm getting the same range of motion on every rep. So what we do is I use these little steps. I got it for like $10 off Amazon, and then I'll have one foot will set up by the kettlebell. The key now is to keep the shoulder packed or back and down. Reach back with the heel, keep that straight line. I'm going to pre-tension that glute, shoulders back, and then pick the kettlebell up, right? Notice if this is my working leg, I want to have the kettlebell in the opposite arm or just use two kettlebells. The benefit to having it in the one arm is that now I'm training that diagonal pattern that we know exists in the body from anatomy trains and Thomas Myers, his writings where he talks about the fascial line that comes up one leg and connects with the other arm, which would have application to running, where this arm and leg obviously come back and create force together, or they would come up and create force together. So we're getting that energy to come through here, through that working arm. And it also trains a lot of rotational stability at the core, which we have found, because we train a lot of people who sit at desk jobs, rotational stability starts to fly out the window, and it can be, lack of rotational stability can be a precursor to injury in the weight room. They'll be doing a deadlift, pushing into the ground. They think they're using both sides evenly. We've got one side works well, we've got one side that doesn't. I've got 60-40 energy transfer. The next thing you know, I've got torque on my spine, and I've got a little bit of an issue there. So that is the single leg deadlift unpacked. Hope that you use this well, and thanks for watching.